The film begins with four friends, one of whom is Caleb, and they all jump off a very high mountain. These four belong to a powerful witch family, descendants of a bloodline that traces back to witches. Because of this, they possess witch-like powers. After their jump, they join a group of students from their school who are partying at the base of the mountain. One of their female friends introduces everyone to a new girl named Sarah, and Caleb is immediately drawn to her. Soon after, a boy and his friends show up and start arguing with Caleb's group, even insulting Sarah. In response, one of Caleb's friends uses his powers, causing the boy to vomit on the girl who had been part of the argument. Sarah and Caleb both laugh at the scene. At this point, another new student named Chase approaches the group. He had recently joined the school. However, before they could interact further, they realize the police are on their way, so everyone scrambles to leave. Caleb and his friends get into one car, while Sarah and her friends are in another. But Sarah's car breaks down, so she asks Caleb for help. One of Caleb's friends, known for his temper and frequent use of his powers, uses his abilities to fix the car. Meanwhile, the police spot Caleb in his group's car, forcing them to speed away. After a daring chase, they drive their car into a valley, temporarily losing the police. However, using their powers, they quickly retrieve the car and escape right under the police's noses. Later, Sarah and her friends return to the dorms, while Caleb and his group head home. Caleb's mother is deeply concerned for him. All witches in their family gain their powers at 13, but at 18, they undergo something called the Ascension, which greatly amplifies their abilities. However, the more they use their powers, the faster they age, growing old prematurely. Caleb's mother warns him to avoid using his powers unnecessarily, as she fears losing him the way she lost his father. Caleb's father overused his powers, which caused him to age rapidly and become frail. Meanwhile, Sarah and her friends discuss Caleb and his group. Sarah's friend reveals that Caleb and his friends are the descendants of the last 5 witch families. Curious, Sarah asks where the 5th family is, noting that she has only met 4 so far. Sarah's friend then reveals that the 5th bloodline had died. Meanwhile, in the forest where everyone had been partying, the police discover the body of a girl. Back at the hostel, while Sarah is taking a bath, she senses someone's presence, making her feel like she's being watched. Terrified, she checks around but only finds a broken lamp. While investigating, she spots a shadowy figure behind her, but it's in the form of smoke, so she doesn't notice it clearly. Just as she's about to return to her room, Caleb's friend arrives. Sarah tells him everything, and they both go to check the bathroom, but by then, there's no one there. The news about the girl's death is also published in the newspaper. Later, as Caleb is driving and talking to one of his friends about the incident, suspicion arises around the angriest member of their group, who frequently uses his powers. Caleb suspects that this friend might be responsible since he has a history of acting impulsively. As they're discussing this, the ghost of the dead girl suddenly appears in Caleb's car, sitting next to him. She quickly transforms into a frightening apparition, causing Caleb to lose focus and crash into a truck. The car is destroyed, and Caleb himself is severely injured. However, using his powers, he reassembles both himself and the car. Caleb informs his friend about this, and they become increasingly worried, wondering who could have sent the girl's ghost after them. Later, while Caleb is out buying medicine, Sarah's friend approaches him, inviting him to a party. Though initially hesitant and saying he has important tasks to handle, Sarah persuades him by offering to help with his work. Caleb agrees, and they drive to an old house where a priest lives. Caleb hands over the medicine to the priest, and we get a glimpse of a man sitting on a chair, with extremely aged hands. Afterward, Caleb and Sarah head to the club where the party is happening, and they join their other friends, who are already enjoying themselves. Sarah and Caleb start dancing and having fun. Meanwhile, Caleb's angriest friend gets into a fight with another group. It turns out that Caleb's friend had used his powers to win a bet, and the group refused to pay up. Caleb steps in to defuse the situation, but his friend, in a fit of rage, uses his powers to attack him. Angered, Caleb, being the most powerful, retaliates with his own powers, asserting that they should not be using their abilities, especially not like this. This moment makes Caleb even more certain that his angry friend might have killed the boy. Later, while driving Sarah home, the two share a deep conversation, filled with emotions and confessions of admiration for each other. That night, Sarah has a strange nightmare where flies swarm her legs and latch onto her. As the dream progresses, more and more flies appear, surrounding her entirely, terrifying her. She sees that these flies are coming from within her friend. Meanwhile, Caleb's angry friend calls another of their friends, insisting that he didn't kill the boy, but he too had seen the ghost. The next day, Caleb is furious with the school principal, who had found out about the fight in the club. That same day, Sarah goes to the school library to research magic and the significance of the flies from her dream. She finds a book with an image that matches what she had seen, confirming that something unusual is happening to her. At school, a boy starts misbehaving and gets into a scuffle with Chase. Surprisingly, Chase easily handles the situation, making the boy back down with a simple tickle before running off. Caleb witnesses this and is left in shock. That night, the ghost of the dead girl appears again, haunting Caleb. The next day, he encounters Chase again, and the two challenge each other to a swimming competition at the school's pool. Caleb is on the verge of winning, but at the last moment, Chase does something strange, and Caleb notices Chase's eyes change color. Caleb crashes into something underwater and falls unconscious, allowing Chase to win. When Caleb wakes up, he tells his friends that Chase used magic to beat him, but they don't believe him, dismissing his claims. Caleb's friends didn't believe that Chase had any powers, and they advised Caleb to let it go. The next day, after class, the principal summoned Chase to his office to question him about the death of the child. The principal was suspicious of Chase because the police had found Chase's ID behind the child's car. Meanwhile, Caleb and his friend were also determined to investigate the child's ghost. Based on Chase's suspicious behavior, they began to suspect him as well. The two friends sneaked into the school and started looking into Chase's details. Meanwhile, Sarah learned that her friend had suddenly fallen gravely ill and had been admitted to the hospital. Sarah rushed to visit her, where the doctors informed her that her friend had an infection that looked like she had been bitten by numerous flies. Hearing this, Sarah was reminded of her dream involving the flies. Back at school, Caleb discovered that Chase's mother had died when Chase was young, and the woman who had adopted him also passed away when Chase turned 18. After reading this, Caleb and his friend became convinced that Chase was a witch, just like them. Caleb recalled a magic book they had studied in their childhood, so the group of friends headed to the convent to investigate further. There, they found information about the ghost and consulted the magic book. They confirmed that Chase was indeed a witch and the last surviving member of the fifth witch family, which they had believed to be extinct. With this knowledge, Caleb confronted his angry friend, asking him if he had killed the girl. His friend swore that he hadn't and, in fact, had also been haunted by the girl's ghost. She had come to torment him as well. Hearing this, the group realized that Chase was behind everything. Everything that had been happening to them was part of Chase's plan. Sarah informed Caleb and his friends about her friend's worsening condition, who happened to be Caleb's best friend. Hearing this, Caleb was unable to contain himself. He immediately grabbed his bike and rushed to the hospital. However, on the way, Caleb's friend encountered Chase, who used his powers to destroy Caleb's bike. It became clear that Chase was the most powerful among them, as he had been honing his abilities for a long time. Caleb's friend pleaded with Chase not to hurt his friend. Chase, in turn, revealed that he had no real interest in hurting Caleb's friend or Sarah. They were merely tools to get to Caleb and the others. Chase then appeared before Sarah, disguised as Caleb. But when the real Caleb arrived, Chase used his powers to render Sarah unconscious by cutting her with flies. He then threatened Caleb, warning him that if he didn't comply, he would kill Sarah. Caleb, desperate to save her, asked Chase what he wanted from them. Chase replied that although he already had more power than the other four witches combined, he wanted even more. He revealed his plan. When Caleb ascended the following day, Chase would steal all of his powers to become even stronger. Chase admitted that he hadn't meant to kill the boy in the car but had no choice, as the boy had witnessed him using his powers. When Caleb refused to cooperate, Chase attacked him with his powers, brutally assaulting him. Chase confessed that his powers were like an addictive drug, one he had become dependent on. He acknowledged that there were side effects to using these powers but believed that if he took Caleb's powers along with the others, the negative effects would be minimized. Caleb tried reasoning with Chase, warning him that while stealing their powers might make him stronger, it would also hasten his aging. But Chase was unbothered by this and dismissed Caleb's concerns, insisting that it didn't matter to him. Chase threatens Caleb, warning him that if he doesn't give up his powers the next day, he will kill Caleb, his friends, and their families. After delivering this threat, Chase leaves. Caleb, shaken, heads to the hospital to visit one of his friends, who had been badly beaten by Chase. When Caleb tells his other two friends about Chase's plans, they suggest that they should fight him. But Caleb refuses, knowing they cannot win that way. He then leaves them behind. At the hospital, Caleb meets Sarah, who is confused about everything happening. She asks Caleb for an explanation, so he takes her to the same old house where he had once brought medicine. There, Caleb reveals an elderly man to Sarah, the same one whose hand we had previously seen. Caleb explains that the man is his father, who is only 40 years old but has aged rapidly from overusing his powers. He tells Sarah everything about himself, his family, and Chase. Caleb confesses that if he gives his powers to Chase after his ascension, he will die. Caleb also shares this information with his mother and friends, declaring that he will face Chase alone. He plans to meet Chase at a party, where Chase would be hesitant to use his powers in front of others. With that plan, Caleb leaves to confront Chase. However, on his way there, Chase ambushes him and attacks, kidnapping him and taking him to an old house where Sarah is already being held unconscious. Seeing Sarah in danger enrages Caleb, and he attempts to attack Chase with his powers, vowing never to give up his abilities. A fierce and dangerous battle ensues between the two, with both using their full strength. Despite Caleb's best efforts, Chase, being stronger, begins to overpower him. As night falls, Caleb's powers begin to ascend, and an immense surge of energy builds up inside him, greatly amplifying his abilities. He fights back against Chase with renewed strength, but Chase is still holding the upper hand. Meanwhile, Caleb's mother, realizing the dire situation, pleads with his father to help. His father, though aged and weakened, gathers all of his remaining powers and transfers them to Caleb. This creates a powerful storm of energy within Caleb, making him stronger than ever before. With this newfound strength, Caleb attacks Chase once more. This time, he successfully overpowers him, and in the final moments of their battle, Caleb defeats Chase, ending his reign of terror. Afterward, Caleb rescues Sarah, and his friend's conditions begin to improve. The police are unable to find Chase's body, but the threat he posed is now gone. Sarah and Caleb leave the area safely, and the story concludes with their departure, marking the end of this intense ordeal. The movie ends with a sense of relief, as the danger has passed, and life returns to normal.